Hello and welcome to this conversation about clean power, where we'll discuss the challenges and opportunities of the low carbon transition for businesses across the UK. I'm Declan Curry. In our discussion, I'm joined by Arjan Geveke, who is the director at the Energy Intensive Users Group, which speaks for some of the UK's largest energy users, and by Anthony Ainsworth, who's Chief Operating Officer at npower Business Solutions. After a turbulent few years for the wholesale energy markets, the government has set out a target of delivering a clean power system by the year 2030, which should result in a more stable and secure energy system for all. But what does that mean for businesses, particularly those companies that spend so much on energy each year? Arjan, let's start with you. When we talk about a major intensive energy user, what sort of company, what sort of industry are we talking about?
Yep. So I'm the director of the Energy Intensive User Group, and that's a group consisting of trade associations that, as you said, represent the most energy-intensive sectors. So I'm just going to mention who my members are. That's UK Steel, Chemicals Industries Association, Mineral Products Association, Confederation of Paper Industries, British Glass and Ceramics UK. So I represent the range from steel companies to all the way down to ceramics.
So big, heavy users of energy, making glass, making paper, making
Yes.
steel. Just give us a rough idea. When we talk about their energy bill each year, is it thousands of pounds? Is it millions of pounds? Where is it on the scale?
Millions to tens of millions. And it's both recognized, both electricity and gas. So some of my members will be more electricity intensive, other members will still be gas intensive.
So what happens to energy bills really matters to their business. It's a big, big part of their spending each year. What are the biggest concerns facing energy intensive users right now?
The biggest concern is simply the electricity and gas prices, so both energy prices. That has a profound impact on their ability to operate, particularly if they operate internationally and have to compete with manufactured products from abroad. Energy prices in the UK are higher significantly for electricity, still, but also for gas compared to US, for example, Middle East, and that's put them on a competitive disadvantage.
Why are British energy prices so much higher than our global competitors?
Yep, you do need to split it up between electricity and gas. So gas is relatively simple. It's a global product, and if you don't extract it from your own area, you have to pay basically a premium. So gas prices in, for example, Japan and Europe and the UK are relatively high, US and the Middle East relatively low. That makes it difficult if you are an international chemical company in the UK and you have to compete with the American chemical companies. That puts you on a disadvantage. Electricity price is to an extent determined by the gas prices as well. And that depends not only on the wholesale electricity price, but also on what we call non-commodity charges, such as policy cost and network charges. And they are higher in the UK than often in other countries, including Europe.
Thank you. Anthony Ainsworth from npower Business Solutions, what are your energy intensive customers, your big users of energy, telling you in overall terms about their concerns, their thinking at the moment?
Yeah, very similar to what Arjan said there. So we've run our business energy tracker for the 4th year now, and it gives us great insight into what our customers, large and small, are saying. And they're saying that their number one business concern, their number one business risk is the cost of energy. If you look at what businesses in the UK pay, then it's usually 50% higher than they would pay in France or Germany, or up to 4 times higher than the USA and Canada would pay. Now, some of that is the cost of the wholesale price, the market price, but a lot of that, over 50% of the bill, is these non-commodity costs. So if we want businesses that are going to be competitive and protect jobs and grow the economy, then we really seriously have to look at how those bills are made up and where those costs fall.
And Anthony, those costs include things like what? The cost of modernizing the energy grid?
You've got a mixture. You've got a mixture of legacy costs for things that have already built and policies that are already in place, as well as the Clean Power 2030 transition and modernising the grid. So it is transmission costs, distribution costs, balancing costs, contracts for difference, nuclear costs. All of these things start to layer up onto a business bill, and that's what takes that proportion to over 50% of a bill.
And Arjan, what are your members, the big users of energy? What are they saying about these transition costs, these net zero costs?
Yeah, it's important to note as well that most of my members, but I don't need all of them, are exempt from most of the policy costs. So government has taken measures over the past years to exempt certain energy intensive industries from the cost of the renewables obligation, contract for different, capacity market, and so on, to the extent that the most electricity intensive sectors don't face that anymore. They've also introduced a scheme to compensate for up to 60% of network charges like the NUOS and the NUOS, but still the energy price, what's left, is still higher than most in Europe, or particularly on gas in the US and in the Middle East, for example. But on electricity costs, even after all the measures taken into account, electricity price, in particular wholesale prices, still puts them on a significant competitive disadvantage. So yes, electricity costs are high, but policy costs have been reduced at least for my members, but it hasn't undone the negative impact of high energy prices.
That government help with some of those costs that your major energy users receive, has that helped them maintain global competitiveness? Has it made a difference?
It probably has, up to a point. It's always difficult to assess whether that's a defining factor in an investment that has been made or not been made. It has helped to extent, but often investment boards abroad see it as a whole, basically. Even if after the policy measures have been removed from these costs, if the energy price is still higher, that's still an incentive basically not to invest in the UK, but it impacts on your return.
There might be some in business, Arjan, who aren't receiving this government assistance that the large energy users get, and they might think, well, why are they getting assistance with this? These costs are necessary. These costs are essential. It's only fair that the biggest users of energy should shoulder the largest burden.
Yeah, and certainly not all my members are exempt from these policies. Certainly on the ceramic side, there are ceramics companies, with small as me, but still energy intensive, that are not that still face all these additional policy costs. And you'd get the question over there: why are we not exempt? Up to a point, government has to need to draw the line somewhere, but the way they've drawn the line is basically on energy intensity and trade intensity. So even if you're big and consume a lot of energy, if you're exposed to international competition that impacts on your bottom line, that's where the government said, then we'll provide you with a protection by exempting you from policy cost.
Anthony, why shouldn't the biggest users of energy pay the most? That seems fair.
Well, I think it depends what you're solving for. So yes, we've seen the business energy tracker that businesses back clean power, but they are concerned about the cost of it and when the cost of it falls. So whether it's businesses in general or intensive users, yes, I would agree, and I think most people would agree that those that use the most should pay the most. But it's about being competitive internationally, and really would question whether those costs all need to be recovered in a relatively short period or spread over a much longer period. We will be getting the benefit of this energy transition for decades to come. So maybe the costs should match the benefit period there. And what we see when we talk about these non-commodity costs, that our forecasts show that they could go up by somewhere between 50 and 60% over the next 5 years, which mean that non-commodity costs make up 75% of an energy bill by 2030. And that's really a significant challenge for businesses.
So these costs taking an increasingly large slice of the business energy bill?
Yes, and the businesses that responded to our survey, again, they back the clean power ambition. It's good for their businesses over the medium term, but they just face pressure in the short term with such increases in costs.
Well, is there a danger, Anthony, that this rising financial burden could undermine support for net zero, for the clean energy transition?
I think it's finely balanced at the moment. Businesses are pro clean power. They get the benefit of sustainable energy, reliable energy sources. So energy security is important, but the cost is the other part of that equation, and it does challenge the premise of Clean Power 2030. So again, I think it's looking at how those costs fall and when they fall.
Arjan, is this what your members are saying, the big users of energy? Are they reconsidering their commitment to the clean energy transition?
They're not reconsidering their commitment. They're committed to net zero and 2050 mobile, but they do question how we're going to get there, particularly with the cost involved. And you've certainly seen in, for example, chemical sector, where you have a whole series over the past months of closures. So it does impact on their business activities in the UK, particularly from, again, if you're internationally owned and you want to invest in the UK, you're not going to make the same return if you invest somewhere else. So that has now led to basically closures, predominantly on the chemicals and as well on the refining side. But I can see the same signals in my other sectors as well.
Is there a question about whether we're trying to do too much too quickly? The government target for net zero is 2050, but we're planning to do the work in the energy system by 2030. Anthony, is that rushing it too much beyond what we can cope with?
I think having the ambition and the timeline to do it is forcing action. It's forcing technology changes. It's forcing innovation. It's putting policy in place. So that is great. It's creating momentum. But I think it's probably a little bit too much in one go.
Arjan, would it help if the date were delayed?
I agree with Anthony, but also if I look at my experience working in civil servants for multiple years, government should never set short-term technology-specific target, which has been done. And just to make a probably more political critical point. So the Conservatives, when they were in power, they wanted to have a clean power target by 2035. And the Labour Party pushed it forward by about 5 years, just to show that they're greener or are more ambitious on this than the Conservative Party. That's the rationale. There's no other rationale for it. That is the political rationale. And then it has been justified after the fact that had basically when the Labour Party come to government. But that's the main rationale. So there's no proper economic analysis of technical analysis to get the 2050 target, why it's there and at 2030. It's purely political. So from that sense, everybody agrees on 2050 target, and the risk is that at 2030 target pushes up on this cost unnecessarily in the short term, but also it diverts resources away from other bits of the economy that you need to decarbonize if you want to meet your net zero target in 2050.
And yet the United Nations, among others, very recently said that the world is in danger of missing its targets on climate and sustainability, and action needs to be more urgent, not less. It's not just politics here at home. It is also, Arjan, the scale and the urgency of the crisis that matters.
Yes, but that's at international level, and a lot of other international partners basically are woefully behind ways to reduce carbon emissions. The UK is not. They're basically on track to meet the UN goals and objectives with the 2050 target. So that's a slightly different debate about the international context and the UK context.
Okay, let's look in a bit more detail at the help that government is providing and what government policy is. We've had the industrial strategy, we have the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme, we have changes to the British Industry Supercharger. What impact are they having on the ground? What difference are they making? Arjan?
It makes significant difficult. So obviously the cost that my members see in the electricity bill in particular goes down, or is not as high as it could otherwise have been. That would be eye-watering. If you include all the, if exclude all the exemptions basically from the electricity bills, and it has made an impact. Whether it's again enough to attract the investment necessary for industries to decarbonize over here is still questionable. But it has made an impact. Whether it has made an impact that the government has intended, I'm not so sure yet.
Anthony, your research for Empire Business Solutions, the business energy tracker, also had some insight on this. What was that?
Yeah, so in the survey, the largest businesses that responded felt that they would get some benefit from these schemes. The British Industry Supercharger Scheme for energy intensive industries, so that gives you 60% relief on electricity network charges, and that will increase to 90% next year. So that's encouraging. And the British Industry Competitiveness Scheme, when that kicks in 2027, will give about 7,000 businesses more relief from policy costs and charges as well. But the vast majority of businesses that responded to the survey felt that the impact and the benefits from those schemes should broaden out further.
I can just come in on that. It's
yes,
a bit difficult because the compensation for network costs is not being funded by government. It's being funded by a levy on everybody else who is not getting that compensation, like SMEs and medium enterprise, but also households. So that's the difficult balance that government tries to strike. So if you broaden it out, that means that the cost will be transferred to basically will become higher for those people, businesses and households that are not exempt. So I think that's a difficult one for government to strike.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely, but that's coming through loud and clear from the survey. That's what businesses are saying they want, and then it's for policymakers to decide what is the best way to fund that over the period. Absolutely, agree.
Arjan, what would your members, the big users of energy, what more would they like to see from the government on this?
Let me quickly make basically two technical points and one big policy point. On the technical point, is for the government to follow up the proposal to increase the so-called compensation rate under the network charge compensation scheme from 6% to 90%. They've consulted on that, but they were still waiting for the government response. The second thing probably that's always on my radar, and I mention it every time government has a budget, is to withdraw the carbon price support mechanism. There's no longer any need for an additional carbon tax, an unilateral additional carbon tax on top of the UK carbon ETS, UK carbon pricing system. So it raises money for Treasury, but it goes at the expense of all electricity consumers, including my members. Although they get 60% to 70% compensation for that, it's still a significant impact. So those two. But there's a broader team behind that as well, which I'm advocating together with quite a few other colleagues and think tanks nowadays, is to remove these policy costs from electricity prices and bills to the exchequer. That's where they belong. They should never have been there in the first place. And removing these policy costs just would make life for government a lot easier.
So the taxpayer would pick
up ultimately, because it goes back to a point that Anthony made as well in the beginning. Where do you fall the cost? Well, you would like ideally the cost to fall who benefits. Now, the beneficiaries of mitigating climate change will be consumers or taxpayers in the future. So the person or the actor who's best placed for that is obviously the government in the form of the taxpayer. There's an additional thing over there as well, that putting policy cost on electricity price is highly regressive. So the people on either ends, like people in households in fuel poverty, or my members exposed to international competition and the risk of carbon leakage, feel the brunt. And the tax system is progressive, so that people basically pay more if they're more wealthy. So those two elements basically say that the policy cost should be removed to the exchequer.
And some might ask why the taxpayer should foot the bill for investment by a private industry on behalf of private companies.
It's not the investment that they directly subsidize. It's the policy cost. So the government basically needs to raise finance to deploy these, to support these new technologies like renewables, CCUS and hydrogen. And they're doing that by putting an obligation or a levy on electricity consumers. That should be done by government itself.
Okay. If you were the energy secretary for a day, what would you do? What's the one immediate, high profile, high priority policy that you would implement in that one day that would have most impact?
Withdraw the carbon price support mechanism. But the other thing that's often forgotten in the whole discussion nowadays is put a lot more emphasis on energy efficiency. Both industrial energy efficiency for the commercial sector and household energy efficiency as well. There's a lot of money going into renewable technology and low carbon technology, which you have to do up to a degree. But if some of that money could flow into energy efficiency policies, again, that ticks all the boxes from a government perspective as well. And it's always baffling why the government doesn't.
And Anthony, that's a point that comes through in the energy tracker as well, the importance of steps that businesses can take in mitigation, whether that's more effective use of energy, more efficient use of energy. That's all part of the mix.
Absolutely. So, businesses are used to investing for the medium and long term, and to do that, they want clear and consistent policies that are in place for the medium term, and then businesses will step up and invest, whether that is in energy efficiency and ways that they can consume less energy, or on-site generation that they can do there. Businesses are willing to play their part if the policies are consistent. And we've had planning reform coming through. We've had extensions of capital allowances coming through. All things that we asked for off the back of our business energy tracker in the past.
Arjan, Anthony, thank you both very much for sharing your insight and for giving us such a stimulating discussion. If you want more information about any of the issues we've discussed during our conversation, the Business Energy Tracker is available for download right now.